There are places on Earth that seem to exist outside of time, shrouded in mystery and whispered legends. Tibet, the land of snows, is one such place. The image of Tibet as a peaceful, spiritual Shangri-La is only a fragment of a much more complex and turbulent story. Tonight, we'll pull back the curtain on this enigmatic land. I'm Alex Carter, your guide as we journey to the roof of the world to uncover truths buried by time, politics, and sheer altitude. We'll explore 5 facts about Tibet that challenge what most people think they know, stories of power, faith, survival, and loss. Settle in as we begin our investigation into the real Tibet. To understand Tibet's present, we must look to its past, when it stood as a sovereign nation. For over 1,000 years, Tibet had its own government, currency, postal system, and army. The Tibetan Empire, at its height, was a formidable power, even capturing the Chinese Tang dynasty's capital in 763. This history of autonomy is often overshadowed by the narrative of spiritual pacifism, but it's central to Tibetan identity. After the empire's collapse, Tibet remained a distinct political entity, signing treaties as an equal with neighbors like Britain and Nepal. In 1913, the 13th Dalai Lama reaffirmed Tibet's independence after expelling Qing forces. The government in Lhasa managed all affairs, collected taxes, and maintained diplomatic relations. Foreign visitors described a unique functioning state, not a lawless frontier. Everything changed in the 1950s, when the People's Republic of China invaded. The Tibetan army, small and under-equipped, was quickly overwhelmed. Under duress, Tibetan delegates signed the 17-point agreement, ceding sovereignty to China. Promises to preserve Tibet's political system and the Dalai Lama's status were soon broken. Chinese control intensified, dismantling the traditional government and replacing it with communist rule. In 1959, a massive uprising in Lhasa was crushed, and the Dalai Lama fled into exile. Tibet's de facto independence ended, its government dissolved, and the nation absorbed into China. Yet, the memory of lost sovereignty fuels the ongoing struggle for autonomy and cultural preservation. A government in exile continues to advocate for Tibetan rights. The story of Tibet's lost nationhood is not just history, it's a living part of its people's identity. The desire for self-determination endures. The Dalai Lama is known worldwide as a symbol of peace, but for centuries, he was also Tibet's absolute political ruler, a god-king. The institution is rooted in the Buddhist belief in reincarnation. Each Dalai Lama is the rebirth of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. When one Dalai Lama dies, a search begins for his successor, a child believed to be his reincarnation. Since the 17th century, the Dalai Lama unified Tibet, wielding both spiritual and temporal power. The Potala Palace in Lhasa became the seat of this theocratic government. Monks and lay officials governed together, with major decisions guided by spiritual divination. The Dalai Lama's authority was absolute. He appointed ministers, approved treaties, and shaped the nation's moral life. This fusion of faith and power created a unique social contract with the Dalai Lama as both ruler and living deity. The current Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, was identified at age 2 and thrust into leadership as a teenager during the Chinese invasion. The system was stable, but transitions between Dalai Lamas could bring instability and political intrigue. Despite challenges, the God-King institution unified Tibet and embodied its national identity. The Dalai Lama's exile in 1959 was a spiritual and political rupture. Since then, China has tried to erase his influence, but for many Tibetans, he remains their true leader. In 2011, the Dalai Lama devolved political power to a democratically elected leader in exile, modernizing the movement. He remains the supreme spiritual leader, but the era of the Dalai Lama as head of state has ended by his own decision. The God King's legacy continues to shape Tibetan identity, even as the political landscape changes. His portrait, though banned, is still revered in secret. The Dalai Lama's story is inseparable from Tibet's fate. His journey reflects the resilience and transformation of a nation. Tibet is defined by its staggering elevation, the highest and largest plateau on Earth. The average altitude exceeds 4,500 meters, making daily life a challenge for all but the well-adapted. Tibetans have evolved unique genetic traits to thrive in the thin air, a legacy of millennia at altitude. Agriculture is a struggle. Barley is the staple crop, ground into tsampa and mixed with butter tea for energy. The landscape is breathtaking, rolling hills, turquoise lakes, and the towering Himalayas, including Mount Everest's northern face. This geography isolated Tibet, allowing its culture to flourish with minimal outside influence. Travel was perilous, reinforcing a deep connection between people and land. Mountains, lakes, and rivers are sacred. Mount Kailash is revered by multiple religions, drawing pilgrims from across Asia. The climate is extreme frigid winters, short summers, and intense UV radiation. Traditional homes are built for survival, with thick stone walls and flat roofs for drying barley and yak dung. The yak is central to Tibetan life, providing transport, food, and materials. The plateau's unique fauna includes wild yaks, chiru, snow leopards, and blue bears. This harsh environment has shaped a resilient, resourceful, and deeply spiritual people. The vast landscapes inspire contemplation and a worldview rooted in interdependence and impermanence. Today, climate change and development threaten this fragile ecosystem. Melting glaciers endanger water sources for billions downstream. Mining and infrastructure projects bring both progress and environmental risk. The roof of the world is more than a nickname. It's the essence of Tibet's civilization and spirit. To understand Tibet's challenges, you must first appreciate its extraordinary world. Here, life is lived closer to the sky than anywhere else on Earth. A nation's soul is its culture, language, and memory. And for Tibet, these are under threat. Since the 1950s, Tibetan language, religion, and traditions have faced systematic erosion. Tibetan is the language of sacred texts and daily life, but Mandarin now dominates education and public life. Younger generations risk losing fluency in their own language, especially its literary forms. Religious freedom is tightly controlled, monasteries are monitored, and monks face re-education and restrictions. The state claims authority over recognizing reincarnated lamas, and public devotion to the Dalai Lama is banned. Major religious festivals are often restricted or cancelled. Urbanization draws nomads into cities, severing ties to traditional livelihoods and the land. Tourism brings economic benefits but often commodifies and sanitizes Tibetan culture. Despite these pressures, Tibetans show remarkable resilience. Secret schools teach Tibetan language. Monks risk their freedom to preserve religious traditions. Artists and writers express Tibetan identity in subtle ways to avoid censorship. Over 150 Tibetans have self-immolated since 2009, a desperate protest against cultural extinction. The Chinese government points to development and poverty reduction, but many Tibetans see this as coming at the cost of their soul. The struggle for Tibet is not just political. It's a fight to keep an ancient civilization alive. It's about the right to speak one's language, practice one's faith, and pass on heritage. The voice of Tibet is fading, but it has not yet fallen silent. The world must decide whether to listen. The preservation of Tibetan culture is a battle for survival. It's a story of resistance, hope, and the enduring power of identity. The future of Tibet's voice remains unwritten. Tibet's monasteries were once vibrant centers of learning, art, and spiritual life. Before 1959, over 6,000 monasteries and nunneries dotted the land, some housing thousands of monks. These were not just places of worship, they were universities, libraries, and the heart of Tibetan society. The Chinese invasion and the Cultural Revolution unleashed catastrophic destruction. Monasteries were dynamited, scriptures destroyed, and priceless art lost. By the end of the Cultural Revolution, most monasteries lay in ruins. Monks and nuns were forced to disrobe, denounce their faith, or face imprisonment, and worse. An entire generation of spiritual leaders was lost. In the 1980s, some rebuilding was allowed, but under strict government control. Rebuilt monasteries are smaller, with limited populations and heavy surveillance. Many now function more as museums for tourists than as living religious centers. The few remaining monks are closely monitored. Despite these challenges, Tibetan Buddhism endures. In exile, the Dalai Lama and the diaspora have rebuilt major monasteries in India, preserving traditions and scholarship. Inside Tibet, monks and nuns continue their faith, often at great personal risk. Their perseverance is a quiet act of resistance. The empty halls and ruined walls are monuments to loss, but also to endurance. The spirit of Tibetan Buddhism survives, even when its institutions are under siege. Buildings can be destroyed, but a 1,000-year-old spiritual tradition is not so easily erased. The story of Tibet's monasteries is one of profound loss and incredible resilience. Tonight, we've journeyed through Tibet's vast and complex history. We've seen a lost nation, a god king, a land shaped by altitude, a culture under threat, and the fate of its monasteries. These 5 facts reveal a story far deeper than the common narrative. What surprised you most? What part of Tibet's story do you think the world should know? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this investigation insightful, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you for joining me on this journey to the roof of the world. Next time, we'll explore the lost Roanoke colony and new archaeological evidence that may finally solve a centuries-old mystery.